Miss Elle, thank you so much for being here with us today. Welcome to the circle.
Thank you so much. It is an honor to be in this space. I am honored that you trust me with your community. So thank you all.
So, speaking of community, I've been a part of your community now for about 2 years. A-
Yes.
And one of the reoccurring themes that I've heard you talk on, and something that you've worked with me on personally, is this notion of rest and how difficult it can be for people to just take a fucking break. And
Yep.
so, what do you think makes rest so difficult for people who are in positions of power or responsibility, whether they are a dominant, a leader, or a parent? And what happens when they don't?
I think the what happens when you don't question is much easier to answer than the why question, because I think there are a lot of factors that go into why someone is struggling to rest. If it's shame around rest, anxiety around rest, if it is a trauma response, if it is perfectionism, there are all of these different pathways that lead into this notion that we translate that says we have to keep going. We haven't worked hard enough to earn rest. And when rest gets viewed through the lens of performance, that I have to reach a certain threshold in order to rest, that is a setup for burnout just by how you're defining it. So I think a lot of factors, the quick answer, in my experience, a lot of trauma, unhealed wounds, rejection sensitivity is a huge one. Insecurity is a huge one. I think insecurity is a driving factor to constantly work. Security can rest. Insecurity always has something to prove. So if you're approaching your purview on life, relationships, sex, business, domination, leadership through a lens of a deficit, through I am not enough, and I'm showing up in this lens of I'm not enough and I'm insecure, you won't allow yourself to stop because you will always have something to prove.
Mm. There's a lot of talk in our culture that I think makes it really hard for people to take a break because I rarely hear people regretting working harder, doing more. But if
Mhm.
you do take a break, it's so easy to say, well, then like the reason you didn't achieve that thing was because you should have been working when you did that thing that wasn't working. Or maybe they hurl the label lazy at you. Oh, you were
Mhm.
being lazy. Doesn't feel like there's, in my experience at least, ever been a conversation about the value of conscious rest and how it might actually fuel and optimize effort later. But
Mhm.
there, like, we just didn't talk about it like that. It was all about like, you know, if you work hard enough, you can achieve it. And so if you don't achieve it, you didn't work hard enough. That's a really tricky thing because sometimes you work really
Mhm.
hard and still don't achieve a thing. And it has nothing to do
Mhm.
with how hard you worked. And, when I was performing on Broadway, there would be times when,
Everyone take a sip of your beverage. The classic circle podcast game here. Anytime Tim mentions that he was a professional dancer, we take a sip.
so, but this is
I'm glad
relevant.
I have tea, not liquor.
This is relevant because when you would get to the final round of a callback, uh, then the assumption was, okay, well, everyone in this room now probably has the talent. They've all worked hard enough to achieve the thing. And then the criteria for why you get hired is so like I've booked jobs because I look the way I look, and I have not booked jobs because I've looked the way I look because they're casting shows, right? Uh, and so it's really tricky then to be like, well, at some point it wasn't about my effort or not. It was about something else. But then if
Mhm.
you walk away and feel, well, the reason I didn't get it was because I didn't work hard enough, then it creates, I think, something really unhealthy. And I feel like that's what I'm hearing you talk about too.
Oh yeah, yeah. And you know what you said about we don't hear the conversation around rest. We don't hear rest being advocated for, and I agree with you. But what I find very interesting is we hear consent being advocated for, especially in the kink community, I'm sure in your space as well. And so consent is this, like, it is law. It is BDSM law. But really, rest and consent are two sides of the same coin.
Mm.
Because rest is our advocating for our no in the same way consent is advocating for our yes.
Wow. Wait. Yeah. Say like
A Miss
rest.
Elle truth bomb.
No, that
5 minutes in. Let's go.
5
no,
minutes in,
totally.
boys.
I think
Our work here is done.
I mean, I think that's so important. So if I heard you, rest is advocating our no,
Mhm.
the way that consent is advocating for our yes, which means that in order to have a fully realized conversation, they both have to be present. It's very yin and yang. It's very like
Yes.
even if you in an experience are always consenting because that's what feels right, the rest part of it, the no to the yes, is still there. This I could get into Chinese medicine, but this feels really like connected. Like even
Yes.
if you don't say it, it's still present. It is still in the experience. It's still part of the conversation.
Yes,
Wow.
because you can't authentically say yes if you're unwilling to say no.
And it's no to so many things. No to the
Yes.
experience of the scene of what's happening, but also no to like, no, I'm not going to go to dinner. No, I'm not going to go out to that show. No, I'm not going to go meet friends. No, I'm not going to take on that project.
Yes, exactly, because you're saying yes to something more valuable. So to me, rest and boundaries and priority and consent are all the same concept. They cannot be separated in my mind at least. Go ahead.
So you are blowing my mind right now. This is I think it's so important because I what I've also observed is a lot of people they say no with a lot of edge. We talk about edges and boundaries in men's work all the time. Like I say it with a lot of edge. And now what I think I'm hearing is well, you're probably saying it with edge because you weren't allowing yourself to say it until you are so pushed. You're so pushed that you're like, now my no has to be like this brick wall of,
Yes.
as opposed to like, well, I can actually say no in a very heartfelt, centered way if it's
Mhm.
always there. So sometimes I don't want to go to dinner. It's not because I don't like you or you're not great at dinner or the restaurant you chose isn't going to be delicious. I might say no for other reasons and I won't need that edge if I'm in conversation with both my yes and my no. Is that what am I hearing you correctly?
Yes, and it circles back, no pun intended, to the
Mhm.
point on insecurity cannot rest. If you are secure in your identity, you're secure in, let's bring in a relational aspect because that's my realm. If we are secure in that relationship, we're secure in our partner's love. They've asked us to go out to dinner, but we're burnt out. We need rest. We need self care. And let's say we are so secure in our partner's love that we go, I don't have to say yes out of obligation. I don't have to abandon myself. I don't have to betray myself to try to prevent a negative outcome. So, therefore, my yes is actually an act of fear at that point, not an
Mm.
actual act of self advocacy. So, if I am approaching my relationship that I'm secure with my partner, we're secure in this relationship, I'm still going to be loved. If I don't accept this invitation, we can rest.
This was the example that you and I worked through in one of our first coaching
Mm,
sessions was this exact thing. It was
mm,
the difference between something being a commitment that I can uphold with devotional energy and it
yes.
tilting into an obligation and how that was burning me out.
Yes. Yes.
Right. So, like, I was looking at too many things that I had said yes to, and I was afraid to say no. And I was getting to that place of fully burnt out and then, like, fully, like, in a place of I can't even function.
Mhm.
I was in
Mhm.
full burnout, and it
Yeah.
was so helpful to look at it that way of like, how can I look at my commitments and which ones are starting to feel like that icky red flag obligation, and which ones can I
Yes.
bring a sense of devotion to? So in the sense of a partner, right? If I'm feeling secure with my partner, I can confidently say, "No, I don't wanna do that thing right now," without the fear of like, "Oh, you're going to abandon me."
Yes. Yes, exactly. And so really that security and knowing that you're loved is really the foundation of rest for me and how I view everything because if you are saying yes because you're afraid to say no. That's not consent.
Mm.
That's an act of self-betrayal. And so if you look at it through that lens, that my rest is an act of setting boundaries, which is an act of self-advocacy, which is the most dominant thing I could do. Me telling that submissive, no, 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 I know that you still want to play, baby, but I'm done. I am not a kink dispenser. You don't get to objectify me. My rest becomes my identity in terms of I am a person, not an object. I'm a person, not a kink dispenser. And so it's a very powerful act of self-empowerment and self-advocacy to step in there and go, no, I know that you want more. I know that you want more play. I know that you want more domination, but you have to wait.
That's right. And
Mhm.
that right there is such a paradigm shift of at least when I was coming into the space and learning about different roles. I was like, oh, the dominant always has to be on, right? And
Mm.
always has to like be holding space and like doing the things. And if I signed up for a spanking scene, like I have to uphold my
Mhm.
obligation.
There it
Right.
is.
And then all of a sudden I'm in something and I'm feeling icky and I'm not fully online and I'm just like feeling bad. And I
Yes.
didn't allow myself to say, no, I'm a tired Dom. And so I
Yes.
cannot and won't do this anymore. Doesn't matter what I said, doesn't matter if I held it up as a commitment at one point. I have the right and the responsibility as a leader to say no.
Yes. Yes.
So I'm sort of interested. I want to dive a little deeper into the BDSM, but my experience of it so far has been that there is a robust communication and dialogue that is occurring in these spaces. That's what I've witnessed and heard. And so I'm curious for people who aren't in that space and they're in
Mhm.
relationships where they don't feel like this idea of like, well, if you feel secure in your love, it's like, okay, well, what if you don't?
Mhm.
And so which I know is like the beginning of we could do 8 episodes to like break that apart, but I mean,
Foreshadowing.
what might you say to someone, "I'm in a relationship, I don't feel totally secure in my love. I'm now, because I'm hearing this, recognizing that I am not advocating for myself or I'm abandoning myself in certain ways." Like, where does someone start to create the change they wanna create?
Yeah, I would say self-awareness is going to be number 1. Like Eric, you were mentioning a few minutes ago where you kept saying that icky feeling, that icky feeling. When we can put language to that icky feeling, so much power gets put into our hands. And so I believe on the outline, forgive me for looking ahead, but I believe on the outline, one of the points was talking about um, really how do you start stepping into this? And I believe, Tim, that's also kind of what you're asking. And for me personally, I can't speak to every dominant, every leader, but for me personally, it was a matter of me working with my therapist and really understanding the physical sensations. So you really want to link to embodiment work, the physical sensations of icky. When I feel icky, let's put a word to that and let's put a physical sensation to that. Because I know you're in fitness. I also started out as a personal trainer, and that's how I got linked into professional domination, but that's a whole different episode. But the mind body connection is incredibly powerful, as you know. And so when we're tapping into this level of self awareness, it's allowing yourself, I think, giving yourself the permission to acknowledge that you feel icky and not gaslighting yourself out of that.
Mm.
Like, this is making me feel uncomfortable. This is making me feel obligated and burnt out and more shut down. It's fine. I committed. I'm going to do it anyway or whatever, and I'm just going to go along with it. And we ignore the red flags that our nervous system is giving us, and we just plow through it. And I think the heart can be really beautiful. I say all the time to my community, compassion without boundaries is codependency.
Mm.
Okay? Because the same thing here, if you're so compassionate about that person, that relationship, that situation, that you will not set boundaries, not advocate for your rest, not say no, you're not actually being full of love and full compassion. actually being codependent. And so when you realize it's actually an act of self-betrayal when I don't advocate, when I don't rest, and when I don't actually tell that person, no, I don't have the capacity, or this is making me feel icky. And we go into that self gaslighting to force ourselves to show up in a situation we're not actually safe or comfortable in. That doesn't do anyone any good.
And this feels like you're talking about when we get into that place, this is the time when we will push ourselves beyond and then get back to that hard boundary to be like, "Oh, I've pushed myself. It's been in the
Yes.
name of these elevated things like altruism or compassion or
Yes.
connection or whatever." And then at some point now I'm so weary or
Yes.
drained that then I get sort of like edgy. I love that you're talking about this because this practice that you just described in your own words is foundational in men's work.
Mhm.
The looking into our physical body for the wisdom that it has. And, I've heard in many books that the body doesn't lie. So if I'm
Mhm.
having a icky feeling,
Mhm.
at the very minimum, I know that I need to pay attention to that in the same way that when I'm having that light time seems to stand still kind of feeling, well, that's also information. It's just the trickier feelings are the ones we might want to pay attention to because that's probably when we're on the precipice of self abandonment or not upholding our
Yes.
own boundaries or commitments.
Yes, yes, and I love the word that you used, like, having that sharp edge to your boundary, because I think a lot of people view setting boundaries that way, like, "I don't wanna be a bitch." Like, I don't wanna come across in some type of way. Number 1, don't be afraid to come across in some type of way. You cannot control anyone else's perception of you. That
Mm.
is their responsibility. Um, but yeah, it's this shame. I think there's a lot of shame. I think when you don't feel safe and you don't feel secure, there is this sense of people pleasing under a virtuous name. I tell my community all the time, when we give, like you said, in the name of altruism, whatever, when we give dysfunction a virtuous name, we empower the dysfunction.
Mm.
And so when we are calling our dysfunction our chronic lone wolf syndrome because we haven't healed from our childhood wounds and we can't ask for help and all of that, okay, call down a little bit. Sorry. Sorry. Um when when we are calling that independence, that hyper independence, that lone wolf, when we're calling that success and independence, when really it's we're scared and we feel insecure, we're giving a dysfunction a virtuous name, and therefore we empower the dysfunction instead of weeding out the dysfunction. And so I think if we're honest with ourselves, like for me personally, when I started doing this work, it started to feel like I had a weight, like a plate weight from the gym in my stomach. And every time I felt pulled to act out of codependency, it literally felt like that other person had a rope attached to the weight and I was being pulled forward.
Mm.
Like I was not propelling myself forward in my own independence, that something was being pulled out of me that was actually antagonistic to my will, violating to my will. And that was the first sign of, oh, I am no longer in compassion territory. I'm in fucking codependent territory. And so it became doing that work because you asked, I'm trying to kind of come back. Where do you start with all of this? It's the embodiment, it's tuning into your body and your nervous system and those sensations. But then the language, it's, well, what is this? I feel controlled right now. I feel anxious right now. I feel whatever it is right now. Putting language to that so you can go, okay, this choice is going to lead me into anxiety. What choice will lead me into peace?
Mm.
And frequently, the choice that will lead to peace is recuperation, some sort of form of rest. It is that no. Hopefully, we've
Mhm.
gotten to a place that it's not a fuck no. It's not
Yeah.
the hard boundary no, but it is a
Mhm.
no, my love, not right now.
Mhm.
Right.
Mhm.
How about this as an alternative? Because, like, I need some rest or
Uh,
whatever it might be.
and just
Yes.
a really quick,
Yes.
I do believe that there are some occasions where a really hard boundary is absolutely appropriate or needed, but
Mhm.
it sounds like based on the studies that I've had in this conversation, that most boundary setting, like that really hard boundary would be very specific situations, and most boundaries could come in a much more compassionate, heartfelt way, a softer way.
Mhm.
We don't need that. We might need to be able to do it in the right timing, but we don't need it almost all the time.
So we reframed rest, right? So it's not this moment of weakness. It really is a powerful form of self advocacy. And so, curious, like, let's take it into the BDSM realm.
I was I was hoping we'd get there eventually.
What are some of the most surprising reasons that people come to you? And have you noticed an undercurrent of like the desperate need to just rest, take a break?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. This is this is to me the crux of it. Throughout the years, I've really seen, you know, in vanilla spaces, we have sex drive, we have libido, and that is what is referred to as arousal. But in kink, there are multiple points of arousal. You can have sexual arousal, you can have dominant arousal, you can have submissive arousal, you can have kink arousal. So you could be arousing, you could be activating any one of these lanes at any point. And I think although there are kink arousal and sex arousal that is absolutely activated, I have seen just as the, if this is appropriate term, the plumb line throughout everything is I need to rest. I need to feel seen. That's a huge one. That's a huge part of the work that we do as dominants is literally being so present and holding so much space for someone that they feel so exposed in a way that they can't access elsewhere. So I think it's feeling seen, and it's also I'm giving you a place where you don't have to be responsible anymore. You don't have to check out anymore, or you can check out. You don't have to be on anymore. And that was actually my initial understanding of BDSM. I got introduced to the lifestyle at 13 years old by an episode of CSI.
Mm.
Mhm, mhm. With Lady Heather, who was the house mistress of this dungeon, and she as a little tiny cute little virgin girl, 13 years old, I watched her. She was the dominant of the dominatrixes. She was the one that empowered the dominatrixes. She was the one that gave them a space to be dominant. And I thought, we have the same thing. And it was so powerful because she said this line in there that said, "Nighttime is when all the needy little boys come out to play."
Mm.
And I thought, that's fascinating because the juxtaposition was the clients that were coming in were high-powered men, CEOs and managers and businessmen and entrepreneurs and lawyers, and she viewed them as needy little boys who were just so tired that they needed a place to check out. And so from the time I was 13 years old, that was my initial paradigm to BDSM. It's a place for people to rest.
I want to pause for a second because this
Yeah.
idea of being seen,
Mhm.
I think is so important. I know that it's been important with me and my therapist, and people who are
Cheers to therapy.
here, right? Um,
Hydrate.
uh, just so that people are clear, and I want to come back to the how it happens in BDSM, but being seen can be so many things. And for me, it's
Mhm.
mainly like, oh, a recognition of my authentic self and an allowance for that, whatever that is, to be present. And I feel like that's what you're discussing too. So can you just talk a little bit
Mhm.
about how either a dom or a sub can can help someone feel seen and why that is so healing and safe?
I think if I could sum it up in my unique way, being seen reinforces your identity. Identity is the most valuable thing that we have. So if you feel invisible, what worth do you have?
Mm.
And if you feel like I am here, I'm showing up, I'm working so hard, but nobody sees me, you're not going to rest. You're going to work more. You're going to work more to feel seen. You're going to work more to prove yourself. You're going to work more to show, hey, look what I've accomplished. Look what I've done. Look at my subscribers. Look at my community. Look at my accomplishments. And that is what breeds this work, work, work. I can't rest. I can't rest. I can't rest. But when you're seen, you go, hey, stop. You've done enough. It's okay. You can let go now. You don't have to try anymore. You are enough as you are. And in this space, you're free. There is no work or earning or striving in this space. There's freedom and rest. And when you give someone permission, just stop, honey. Baby, just stop. You can check out all the responsibility out there. I know it's a lot. You've done enough. Come into this space. And to me, that's how I've always viewed it is when I see you, I'm acknowledging that you exist. I'm acknowledging that you have value. And if I am dominating you, then I'm investing time into you, which means I see value in you enough where I want to invest time into you. And so I think just the act of being with a dominant is like, wow, this dominant sees me and likes me and wants my energy around them. And for very busy, entrepreneurial, overworked, introverted dominants,
Clocked and clocked.
there is no better there's no better compliment that I could give a submissive to go come into my space because you don't drain me. Come into this space because we can actually benefit from each other in this space kind of thing.
That's such a yogic concept. What I'm really hearing you talk
Mhm.
about is a mutually beneficial relationship.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That's why I say that to me, vanilla doesn't exist. DS exists in every relationship structure. You describe any relationship you have with your mom, your dad, your siblings, your friends, coworkers. I will be able to identify who is dominant and who is submissive in that dynamic. It exists everywhere. The only thing that we do differently in BDSM is we put language to it and then
Mm.
we exploit what those roles provide in relationship. That's really all we do.
I'm really curious, a short aside. Um, do you find that people in queer relationships, same-sex relationships, uh, ebb and flow between the dom and sub poles more, or do you feel like almost everyone is constantly ebbing and flowing between these poles in the unfolding of their relationship?
I do think that yes, the ebb and flow of dominant and submissive is in every relationship, every dynamic, two men, two women, one man, one woman. I think it's just everywhere. I think that when you have two partners that are more switchy or more balanced, less polarized in their dominant and submission, that's where the ebb and flow can seem a little crazy and chaotic sometimes. But I think that ebb and flow is always there no matter what kind of relationship structure. It's like the friend group where the one friend is always paying for everyone else and the one friend that's always forgetting their money. Who's dominant and who's submissive?
Mm. Well, thank you for that. I think that really answers the question. In men's workspaces, they talk a lot about polarity, and the language is often masculine and feminine. And now in our queer space,
Mm.
I often prefer something more like yin and yang, sun and moon, and something a little bit less gender. But they will talk about, well, who's holding this pole and who's holding this pole,
Yeah.
and it feels like there's a little bit of a crossover.
Yeah. I think we could call it leadership and followership. Right? Like who's leading and who's following. Say this in dance. And so it's like who's got the the masculine pole, who's got the feminine pole, who is leading and who is following.
And that actually, so I'm glad you brought up dance again because I love talking about it. As what?
Oh, look, I was already a step ahead. I felt it coming intuitively.
So it was always said, in partner dancing, especially like ballroom or swing dancing. Oftentimes, if you were a man, you would be the lead, and if you were a woman, you'd be the follow. But they would say like, oh, in order to be a really good lead, you have to also know how to follow. And so the leads would then practice being the follow in whatever technique they were doing. So West Coast swing or cha-cha, doesn't really matter. If you like by learning that skill, and so I'm curious, is that true for BDSM?
In my opinion, yes, I do believe the best dominants have been submissive. I have been in the lifestyle, like I said, from the time I was 13 years old, I was introduced to it. I had my first daddy dom at 16. He was 35. I was 16. No minors in kink, but that's beside the point. And so my first experiences of actually physical real life experiences in the community were from the bottom side. And it was on the bottom side that I learned this is what I like from a top. This is how I like being led. This is how I get activated and triggered in a bad way. Here are the things that I would never want a dominant to do. So it's like you have so much empathy that comes from just like being in such a vulnerable, open position that when you get in a place of power, hopefully you bring that empathy with you and kind of reverse engineer it and go, okay, if I didn't like this on the bottom side, I'm certainly not going to do this to someone on the top side.
And this is a beautiful parallel for the entire conversation. The reason why we're using BDSM kind of as the case study is it can be applied universally. So in this exact moment, that was my trajectory in my corporate career.
Talk about it.
Looking at management, looking at leaders and saying, absolutely not. I will never do that as a leader, as a manager. And then as I worked my way up, learning from that, learning to be the worker, learning to be the follower, learning to be the submissive in the relationship with a person who was above me, who was the leader, who was my dominant. And then saying, when I'm in your shoes, I will never do that. I'm going to do this instead.
I also think it trains a kind of listening. And
and
that when you are following, so I'm going to go back to dance since that's more my purview. Like if you're following,
is that
let's do it. Hydrate. Miss Elle is really good at following rules, making rules, and upholding people to rules.
Okay, I love it. The skill of listening, and with a dance form, it's almost instantaneous sort of physical communication. There's rarely someone saying, step your right foot forward. These are techniques, and then I think that training and listening translates even if you don't need it in the exact same way. So yeah, when you're talking about like leadership, right? I learned, I had to listen to these instructions over and over and over again. So now I'm going to give the instructions I think would have been the clearest or the most helpful or the most empowering or whatever, depending on the task, and I think I'm like, wow, that's really valuable. That is time well spent if you walk away saying, I can communicate better, more compassionately, and be of greater service because I heard this and now I say it this way.
Oh, yeah. But it requires humility. So much humility. And that's the key. Like, I've worked with submissives that were not humble, and it's gross. It's disgusting. I yeet them. I don't want to be around that, right? It's gross. But it's equally off-putting from the top side too. And so yes, by going through the submissive experience or bottoming, you do get a level of empathy that if you are humble, and that's the key, if you have empathy without humility, then what you have is a weapon to manipulate somebody with. Like I've had, you tell a narcissist your deepest, darkest secrets and fears and insecurities, they're not going to get compassionate with you. They're going to weaponize it.
We're getting truth bombs.
Mm-hmm.
Like
boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Was I Are we free of truth bombs? Do we not want truth
No,
bombs? Is
no,
it too
no.
hot
I
in
just,
here?
Yeah,
I'm
hold on. I
just,
just got to duck and cover
yeah.
right now. I got a shelter in
Oh.
place.
Oh, if I'm calling you out, I'm so sorry.
No, it's really powerful, like what you just said. And empathy requires what again? What was the word you used?
Humility.
Humility.
Humility. Yeah. Yeah. If you have all of these experiences on the bottom side and you know the inner workings of the submissive experience and you know how to really get into the mind and you know how to wield certain emotional, physical, sexual reactions, but you don't have the humility to do it with integrity,
Mm.
Weapon.
it's a weapon. And that's why, like, there's risk in erotic intelligence. There's risk in the skills that I teach, but there's risk in everything. There's risk in everything. And the benefit for people must outweigh the risk. And I truly believe that. I truly believe if you know how to communicate well in your relationship, you know how to be present, be attentive, hold space, set the appropriate boundaries. You set yourself and your partner up for this ebb and flow, this ongoing erotic power exchange that doesn't have to die on a bad day. You can leverage your opportunities and your circumstances around you for greater connection.
I'm curious because the bad day idea, this, because I think when we hear these things, these skills, I mean, like, oh, they have to be done right. But it feels to me, based on what I'm hearing, that there's an allowance for it not to always be perfect. And that if the trust and the communication and the boundaries and the expectations, if all these things are present in integrity, then something can go a little awry and be course corrected. Am I hearing you correctly?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I don't think if you're in relationship with someone that you don't feel like you are allowed to be human enough to make a little mistake and course correct, you need to get out of that relationship.
Another truth bomb.
Mhm.
I mean,
Yeah.
y'all wanted to know, like, what do people do if they're listening to this and they're in this relationship, they don't feel safe with someone? I would say take inventory. How long have you been with this person? If you've been with this person over a year, over 2 years, you don't feel safe with this person, that is not the relationship for you. What are you doing? Wasting your time.
And walk walk the people through the ladder. If you don't feel safe, then there is no chance to build
Come on, you
trust.
know it.
I
You
know it.
know
If
it.
if you do not feel safe, there is no way you are going to trust that person. If you
Come
do
on.
not trust that person, there is no way there you are going to be vulnerable with that person. And if you are not vulnerable with that person, how are you going to have an intimate relation and an intimate connection with them? Intimacy, into me you see. You cannot
Mhm.
see into me if I don't feel safe. You cannot see into me if I don't trust you. You cannot see into me if I am not vulnerable with you.
Because vulnerability is the act of allowing parts of us to be seen, right?
Bringing
Yeah.
it back to feeling seen.
Yeah.
Yes.
So if I'm not allowing you to see parts of me because I feel like they are at risk or that you can't hold them with compassion, then I'm hiding, and then therefore whatever interaction I'm having isn't fully me. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like if you don't feel safe enough to be human with your partner, be real with your partner, then I think it would be we've either got a narcissistic situation going on or some rejection sensitivity is running the show. And either way, that's not a good option. I don't need to know much else after that. Either way.
Rejection sensitivity, I think you've mentioned it once before. Um, that feels like, can you just define it? Because I feel like that's a thing most of us have.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
can you
Oh yeah. 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 Yeah.
can you just talk a
I,
little bit about it?
absolutely. Yeah. I think honestly, I don't understand how these little baby things are growing up with this social media and all of this. Like, it's causing chronic rejection sensitivity in this new generation where it's become part of their personalities. This is why we have so many, I truly believe, these mental health issues and stuff. It's like you are living way too much here online and getting constant criticism from people who should have no place to speak in your life. And
Mm.
so I think rejection sensitivity comes from old wounds, comes from being bullied in school, being rejected by our first love. You know, it could be anything, but I think I think deep rejection sensitivity is very linked to attachment theory, which is usually grounded around age 7. And so I think a lot of it stems from just our parents aren't perfect, our childhoods aren't perfect, other children are mean and ridiculous, and all these other things that we go through in life, right? And we grow up with that wounded inner child inside of us that is still feeling like that scared, rejected, nobody likes me, nobody wants me, 6, 7-year-old little boy, little girl, but we're this big buff man, and we're this big strong entrepreneur, or we're this strong badass dominatrix, and we cannot let anyone see that our inner child is really online. I think that really is rejection sensitivity, when those wounds in our inner child shows up and says, I don't feel safe, and I don't feel valuable, and I don't feel worthy to be here. I think that's really a big part of rejection sensitivity. So if our inner child is online and we are in our big buff adult body, but our inner child is online, then we're going to engage in that relationship not from this place that we're manifesting on the outside, but really what's authentic on the inside, that unhealed wound.
And so this is sort of bringing it back then. The first step needs to be a conversation with your internal sensational experience to help me recognize, oh, I'm operating from
Yeah.
rejection sensitivity before I'm able to make a change. Because obviously, we all probably have prayed for the light switch. The light, they'd be like, I'm going through a breakup, and I just want to go over there and flip the switch, and I don't want it to hurt anymore, right? But since that light switch doesn't exist, we first have to say, okay, well, what's happening in me? Oh, is this rejection sensitivity? That would be step 1, right? It isn't a magic wand.
No.
It's how we recognize, well, this is what I'm doing, and this is how that's making me feel.
Yeah, yeah. It really is an organic process. And I think it ties back into the sharp edge that you were talking about earlier. That if we can stay aware enough when little triggers come up, when we feel a little bit pushed, when we feel a little bit controlled, when we feel a little bit violated, we actually say something right there in the moment, take rest, take space, set a boundary, whatever we need to do so that it doesn't get to the extreme where we have to have that very, very strong edge. So it is a matter of, this is how I'm feeling, this is what happened. How will I choose to go forward in a way that serves me, not my inner child? Because at that point, you want to talk about DS. That inner child is the submissive, and you in your adult self is the dominant. And you now have to reparent that inner child. You now have to dominate that inner child. And so this work is not about following your feelings. I don't believe that at all. Feelings make excellent slaves, terrible masters. Do not follow your feelings. Okay. But I think feeling awareness, where you go, okay, here are my feelings, and my feelings can inform my decisions. My feelings do not control my decisions. My feelings are allowed to inform my decisions. And right now I'm feeling violated. I'm feeling icky. I'm feeling whatever it is. So even if I don't know what's going on, I'm going to take space and maybe circle back to it. Just giving yourself that permission, I think, is huge.
Because the feeling component of it is going to be one of the tools that we use to recognize if a dynamic is working for us or not. And it isn't. And then what I feel like I'm hearing you say is the adult version of us, or the dominant aspect of us, is then going to make some conscious choices, hopefully with like rest and space, in service to what our purpose is, what our mission is, like what this adult person moving through the world wants, right? So the inner child, it seems to me, wants to just feel better. I want whatever it is.
Usually.
Yeah, I just want to feel better. But what I'm hearing is, so we use that emotion, that feeling, as an indication something about this isn't right. Now the adult me, the dom me, has to step online and do some introspection and some awareness work to figure out what I think that might be, and then make conscious choices that are not based on the emotions. Meaning, like,
Yes.
I'm not going to lash out at you because that will feel good for a second, but instead, what's in service to my purpose, or the person I'm like yearning to be.
Right. and what will
Yes.
serve the space or the scene that's happening right now, stepping into that leadership position and making the choices, setting the stage, like creating the space in which this can happen. And that can be internal space, external space, a dungeon, a room, or just our internal landscape. And I think this is the
Mhm.
powerful like parallel that we get to draw with BDSM, with DS
Yes.
specifically, is within so many aspects of our life, our internal relationship, our external relationships. And how then do we step into those positions of leadership so that we can allow others to rest in that space,
Yes.
including
Yes.
our inner child? If the inner child is
Woo!
always online, banging at the door at the bottom of the stairs, freaking out, that is a tired, needy little boy.
And that's where a lot of brats come in.
Yeah. Mhm. Episode 3 coming.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And part of that, like, for me, I'm a natural degrader. I'm a sexual switch, so I like things as a sexual bottom, or I like things as a dominant on the top side that I do not tolerate as a sexual bottom. And one of those is I am a very skilled degrader on the top side, and very easy for me to go into degradation, humiliation. But on the bottom side, that is absolutely a non-negotiable for me. And so it's really like even understanding like your switch points and advocating for yourself on the top side in a different way than you do on the bottom side. It gets so layered, all of these angles. Go ahead.
Switch points. So I'm actually going to ask. It would be interesting for us to do for the description of this episode a little glossary of some of these terms for anyone listening, just so that we're
Yeah.
clear. But the switch point feels like a really powerful thing that I've experienced, I think, in other aspects of my life when I'm this ability and this desire to, when I'm in these situations, I can show up like this. And then when I'm in these situations, I tend or am more naturally prone to show up like this. And that's okay. And as opposed to this idea of, and I think men, in men's workspaces are working through this idea of I'm supposed to be this thing all the time. I'm supposed to always have the right
Ah,
answer, always be strong, never need help. I'm supposed to be good at bed
Always be in
without
charge.
without ever asking, what my partner needs. I'm supposed to be really good at sex. I'm supposed to, all these things. And I think the human experience is one where, well, I'm sometimes this here and I'm sometimes this here. And we could have a conversation about that and allow that to be fully true. And I will give an example. I was working at Crunch Fitness when I was early in my schooling to be a dancer.
Or hydrate.
To be a dancer. Okay. I remember my friends with whom I had been dancing, they came to see me at work and they were like, "Tim, you seem so upset. Like, what's going on?" I'm like, "I'm not upset. I'm the manager. I play with you in rehearsal because that's a totally different environment and we have the space for that. And we're also dancing and we're sweaty. And, we worked hard in dance rehearsals too, but there was room for it. I'm like, I'm the manager now.
this
Everyone
is my resting manager face.
yeah, and everyone I'm a manager for
Yeah.
people who are older than me. Everyone here is older than me, and I'm the manager. I'm like, I don't have the luxury right now, but I'm like, but it's still authentically me. I
Yes.
actually wasn't feeling angry, but it was interesting that the perception was that I was. I'm like, oh, because you're comparing me to this other thing, and it's all me.
Yes.
They're all real me. Um,
Yes.
and so I think I love that we're having this conversation because I think we need more of it. Like, I don't always have to be in charge, but sometimes I am.
Yes, and embrace it.
Yeah.
Like, when I am on, like, I have a very strict, like, when I am in work mode, I'm also in dom mode. So, like, that whole space flows very naturally for me. It's not sexual or feminine in any way, shape, or form. So when I clock out, it is not just I'm clocking out of work mode, entrepreneurial mode. It's I'm clocking out of this dominant masculine, hard, cerebral headspace. And I am choosing to go, I want to check the fuck out and get back into my feminine energy again. And
Mm.
so, it's a matter of that switch point becomes a choice of rest. For those switches out there, that switch point becomes a choice of rest. It is not, I'm incapable of being dominant anymore. It's I've been doing it for a minute and I'm done doing it.
That's right. And is a courageous act. Say, I need space, I need rest, and I need to just take a beat. And to be able to do that with somebody then, in order if you can be so vulnerable with somebody, to be seen in that, to be seen in the, oh, I am tired right now, or I need to not take on this additional responsibility and I need to hand over the masculine baton to you for a second. That could be an internal dialogue or it can be an external dialogue.
Yes.
And that capacity to recognize when that moment is, to take that rest, so powerful. So I want to be mindful of time and start to get us towards the finish line for this episode because we are 50 minutes in, close to 60, and we have barely scratched 2 segments of a of a 5, 6, segment outline.
You knew what you got when you got me.
Uh-huh. Lovingly and so excitedly so. For all y'all listening, like, Miss Elle has lives on YouTube, and she has a Discord community, and the wisdom that she has dropped in this episode is so juicy, so delicious, so mind blowing. It happens so frequently on her YouTube live. I will sit there and like group watch it with friends, and we just like gag at each other. We're just like, ah, 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 ah. It's just like the capacity, yeah, is really incredible. So that brings me to the place that I would like to leave here. How does a person who is the dominant of dominance, who is the Lady Heather, was it?
Lady Heather, yeah.
Who is holding space for those that hold space. How do they take their rest?
Unapologetically, without giving a shit what other people think. It's a tricky one because I always have people or projects vying at me. I mean, I get people on a daily basis, mistress, I want to serve you, goddess, can I serve you? And I don't even advertise for that anymore. And so it it's just this matter of anything that you put on the altar of social media will be burned by fire.
Mm.
Anything you put up on the altar of social media will be burned by fire. So I do not put my personal life on social media. I do not put when I check out. So I, number one, do not have any personal social media accounts. Not one. Every account that I have is strictly for the business because I'm not on social media when I'm not working. And so for me, my boundaries are very unapologetic and they're very strict. I don't have time to mess around. And if me self-advocating for my rest appropriately makes you perceive me in some type of way, then perceive me in some type of way. I have but I have shit to do and I cannot let your false perception of me get me into a place of burnout. You do not have that authority over me. You do not have that power over me to guilt me or shame me or make me feel insecure enough to control the pace of my purpose.
To control the pace of my purpose.
And that's part of why I said rest and boundaries. There's nothing that makes you any more dominant because you are saying, no, you don't control me. I'm sorry that you have demands for me, but I choose what I receive. And if I'm at capacity, you do not get to push your agenda onto me. And so it's come from a place of surviving 8 years of a highly abusive marriage with a covert narcissist because I didn't set boundaries. I was a broken little girl with no identity, no sense of worth. I wanted somebody to see me. And this covert narcissist said, if you trust me, I can help you. And it was my lack of boundaries. Yes, it was his abuse being abusive, right? But if I had had the self advocacy to say, no, you are not allowed to abuse me, that's a whole different ballgame.
So this is so perfect. I mean, you are basically describing this idea of the wounded healer, and my teacher talks about this all the time, that we take our experiences like the one you just described, and now you have transmuted it into having learned from that to heal yourself and then to bring nourishment and safety and exploration to others. And that is really at the crux of the shamanic yogic embodiment work that we do, which is, you know, a lot of personal healing work in service to that. So then I can give from my experience in a way that may be of service. So thank you so much for sharing that,
Oh,
because
yeah.
the world needs it. And it really, the world needs people willing to do the work so that I can say, I've already been there. So maybe you don't have to. Maybe you don't have to do the thing I did for 8 years. I think I heard you say 8 years, right? Yeah,
Yes.
maybe someone else doesn't have to do it for 8 years. Maybe you can help them at the end of 1 year to be like, the
Yes.
signs are there.
If
And
you
so
don't feel safe, leave.
yeah, the
We
latter, right? Yeah,
and I already said it. There we go.
yeah.
Yep.
Anyway, so thank you for demonstrating that, because it's a core principle in our
Yeah.
community of, the gift we have to give is often from the wound that we healed or are in process of healing. And
Yes.
it's really beautiful. Thank you.
Oh,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Yeah, yeah. For me, your perspective is far more beautiful than mine. Mine is really, I'm not going to let all those years go wasted.
Mm.
I'm not going to let all those years of me being forced to shrink myself, shrink my voice, being abused and traumatized all those years. I'm not going to waste that pain. And that really is it. I'm far too tenacious to allow that to happen. So you're talking to an Enneagram 8. I don't know what else to say.
I'm just always in awe. I love it. I love spending time with you.
I love spending time with you. And now you, Tim.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, hearing you talk about that of like how does the dominants or Lady Ruth, Lady Heather take rest, right? It reminds me of Tim, actually, who in so many parts of his life is in a position of leadership. And at our most recent retreat was able to rest. Somebody else was able to hold the container. Somebody else was able to hold the space so that Tim could, in that situation, be a follower.
And
I don't
how
have,
did it
yeah.
feel?
I mean, I felt really loved. I
Good.
felt like some of these people in my life who I mean, I think I felt seen, and
Good.
I was seen for what had been able to bring, but also for what I needed, and this allowance to be like, "Oh, you're going through a really rough time,
Mm,
and that's okay here." Yeah, this is why I think I'm so passionate about these spaces, because I felt a thing I rarely feel, and then I was
yeah.
safe enough to relax around, in this case, around men that wanted nothing from me except my fullness, which is a big part of men's work.
Yes.
I don't want anything from you. I don't need anything from you except your fullness and whatever that means. And it just was really incredible. Very healing. It was the
Good.
medicine I needed in that moment.
Good. Rejuvenating.
Yeah.
Good. And I'm glad that you facilitated that.
Definitely, I encouraged. Yeah. This is the reminder for everyone. Rest and the capacity to rest can come in a lot of different shapes and sizes. It is my hope, my wish, my prayer that anyone that is listening to this who is in a position of leadership, who thinks that they always have to be on, that they always have to be in control, that they always have to have the right answers, that they always have to be the one with whatever, and find what works for them to take their rest. Whether that is hiring a professional dominatrix or going to therapy, working on yourself so that you can find the words to articulate to people, I have an icky feeling right now.
Mm.
I cannot take on any more responsibility because it's now starting to feel like an obligation. Obligation. An obligation is getting me to my limit, to my edge, and I'm burnt the fuck out. And because I'm burnt out, I'm not making good decisions. And I'm not my most effective leader. And so this leader actually needs to take a step back, be a follower for a little bit, and rest. That could be, again, something external outside of us, or it could be internal. So That really is what I took away from this episode. I hope episode 1 of several more to come. And with that, I am in deep appreciation and gratitude for you taking this time to be here with us. And I am feeling very complete. And I'm going to do the round robin now.
I feel complete.
So
I feel complete. Is there another answer I should provide at this juncture?
it's your opportunity, where if not complete, to offer anything else.
To offer. I would probably just end on this and say, dominance leaders, whatever capacity you're in, you cannot pour from an empty cup. You cannot give what you do not have. And if you're trying to pour out creative ideas for scenes, but you're so burnt out that you can't even think creatively anymore, that's full stop, man. Like, you are a human being first, not a human doing.
Mm.
You can stop, you can rest. Like, you cannot pour out from an empty cup. You cannot give what you don't have. And it's not selfish to make sure that you're full so that you can pour out on others well.
Beautifully. Thank you so, so, so much. Now, are you feeling complete?
I think so.
Jamie, how are
Yes.
you?
He's having a dream right now. He's dreaming. So
Should
yes,
keep
but
it
we are good over here.
Tim, will you take us out, please?
I will. So let's close our eyes or lower our gaze and bring our awareness back inward for a moment. And it is with deep appreciation and gratitude for this shared sacred space, for this conversation, for any awarenesses, understandings, or insights that we might have gained, that we now release the archetypes and the spirits that we've called in. And with these words, our container is open but not broken. Aho.